The king hid his deformed daughter out of shame. But at the queen's funeral, she sang a song that made the entire kingdom cry. A brilliant summer sun bathed the Kingdom of Westridge in golden light. On the day Princess Evelyn was born, the royal banners fluttered proudly from every tower of the majestic castle, and in the streets below, people danced and celebrated, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding within the palace walls. Queen Annabelle's screams had faded to exhausted whimpers as the royal midwife lifted the newborn princess. The infant's first cry pierced the tense silence of the birthing chamber, strong and clear, but that momentary triumph dissolved into shocked gasps and averted gazes as the midwife's smile faltered. "Let me see my child," Annabelle demanded, her voice hoarse but determined. The midwife hesitated, exchanging worried glances with her assistants. "Your Majesty, perhaps you should rest first." "My daughter now." The queen's tone left no room for argument. The midwife approached reluctantly, placing the swaddled infant in her mother's arms. Queen Annabelle's breath caught as she uncovered her daughter's face. The right side was perfect. Delicate features, skin like porcelain, reflecting Annabelle's own beauty. But the left side bore angry red markings, the skin puckered and distorted, pulling at the corner of the tiny mouth and eye, rather than recoil. Annabelle traced a gentle finger along both sides of her daughter's face. "My beautiful girl," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "My perfect, beautiful Evelyn." Outside the queen's chambers, King Daniel paced the corridor, his heavy boots echoing against stone walls. At his side, Sir Bradford, his trusted royal advisor, watched with calculating eyes. "Your Majesty," a trembling servant bowed before the king. "The queen has delivered a daughter." Daniel's face lit up. A princess, though he had hoped for a son. The birth of his first child filled him with pride. "I must see them both at once." "Your Majesty," Sir Bradford interjected smoothly, placing a restraining hand on the king's arm. "Perhaps we should let the physicians examine the child first, I've heard," concerning whispers from the birthing chamber. Before the king could respond, the chamber door opened, and the royal physician emerged. His face was ashen as he bowed deeply. "Speak plainly," the king commanded. "Your Majesty, the queen is well, but..." The physician swallowed hard. "The princess bears a significant mark upon her face, a deformity most severe on the left side." King Daniel's joy crumbled. "A deformity? What do you mean?" "It appears to be a birthmark, Your Majesty, but unlike any I've seen, it distorts her features considerably." The king brushed past the physician and entered the chamber. His eyes fell upon his wife, radiating exhausted joy as she cradled their child. Then his gaze dropped to the infant's face, and he stopped cold. "What is this?" he whispered, his voice strangled. Annabelle looked up, her smile fading at his expression. "Our daughter, my love, our beautiful Evelyn." "Beautiful," the word escaped as a harsh laugh. "Look at her. I see her perfectly," Annabelle replied, steel entering her voice. "She is strong and healthy, with your blue eye on one side and my brown on the other. A perfect blend of us both." Sir Bradford had followed the king into the room, his sharp eyes taking in the scene. "Your Majesty," he murmured, "such a mark is most unusual. In my extensive studies, such deformities often signify..." He paused dramatically. "Divine disfavor." "Nonsense!" Queen Annabelle snapped. "This is superstitious fear-mongering." But Daniel's face had gone pale. The kingdom had only recently recovered from years of drought and disease that had plagued his father's reign. Many had whispered that the gods had abandoned Westridge, if his firstborn child bore such a mark. "What will the people say?" Daniel whispered, backing away from the bed. "What will the neighboring kingdoms think? Our alliance with Eastmere depends on a royal marriage. No prince would accept." "She's barely an hour old," Annabelle cried. "How can you speak of marriages when she has just taken her first breath?" Bradford leaned closer to the king. "Your Majesty, there are precedents for handling such sensitive matters. The child need not be presented to the court or the public." "What are you suggesting?" Annabelle clutched Evelyn tighter to her breast. "The princess could be raised in seclusion, within the castle but away from prying eyes," Bradford explained with practiced sympathy. "She would have every comfort, every luxury, but would be spared the cruel stares and whispers her appearance would surely invite." "You suggest I hide my child away like some shameful secret?" Annabelle's voice trembled with anger. "Never." But the king's expression had shifted from shock to grim resolution. "It would be kinder to her," he said slowly, "and necessary for the kingdom. If word spreads that the royal line is tainted, it could destabilize everything we've built. Daniel, please, Annabelle begged, tears flowing freely now. She's our daughter. The king wouldn't meet her eyes. Prepare the East Tower chambers, he ordered a nearby servant. They're to be remodeled for the princess. No one is to know of her condition outside this room. His gaze swept the chamber, settling on each face with threatening intensity. Anyone who speaks of this will face charges of treason. The East Tower is cold and remote, Annabelle protested. At least let her have rooms near mine, where I can care for her properly, Bradford interjected. Your Majesty, the Queen needs rest. This distress is unnatural so soon after childbirth. Perhaps the healers should administer a calming draft. Daniel nodded sharply. See to it. As servants rushed to obey, Annabelle clutched her baby closer. I won't let them hide you away, she whispered fiercely. I won't. But within days, despite the Queen's desperate protests, private chambers deep within the castle were prepared. Only Lady Esther, Annabelle's most trusted lady-in-waiting, was allowed to assist with the infant princess to the court and kingdom. King Daniel announced with staged solemnity that the Queen had suffered a tragic miscarriage. Bells tolled mournfully throughout Westridge, while behind locked doors, Princess Evelyn cried for her mother in richly appointed rooms that would become her prison. In the shadows, Sister Bradford watched with satisfaction as all proceeded according to his design. The ancient prophecy he had discovered in the forbidden texts spoke of a princess marked by the gods, who would bring ruin to those who ruled through deceit. He had moved quickly to neutralize the threat, planting seeds of shame and fear in the king's mind as he walked the palace corridors that night. He passed Queen Annabelle's chambers and paused, hearing a haunting melody drifting beneath her door. The Queen was singing an old lullaby, her voice carrying through stone walls as if seeking her banished child. Bradford frowned. The Queen's connection to her daughter could prove problematic, and that song, it reminded him of something in the ancient texts, something about the power of royal women's voices in Annabelle's maternal lineage. One problem at a time, he murmured to himself, continuing down the darkened corridor. The princess is contained, now to ensure she remains that way. Behind him, Annabelle's song continued, building in strength as if defying the very walls that imprisoned her daughter. In her arms, she clutched not her child, but a small leather-bound journal, its pages blank, waiting to record the truths that would one day shatter the foundations of Westridge. 7 years passed like the slow turning of seasons within the hidden chambers of Westridge Castle. While the kingdom flourished under King Daniel's rule, expanding its borders and filling its treasury, Princess Evelyn's world remained confined to a handful of rooms deep within the eastern wing. The morning sun filtered weakly through narrow windows as Lady Esther brushed Evelyn's dark hair, so much like her mother's. The child sat unnaturally still for a 7-year-old, her mismatched eyes, one blue, one brown, fixed on the illustrated book in her lap. Will Mother come today? Evelyn asked, the same question she posed every morning. Lady Esther's hands never faltered in their gentle strokes. Yes, my sweet. The Queen always comes. The door opened precisely at 10 o'clock. As it did each day, Queen Annabelle entered, her formal smile melting into genuine joy as the little girl rushed toward her. Mother! Evelyn cried, throwing her arms around Annabelle's waist. The Queen knelt, taking her daughter's face between her hands. My beautiful girl, how are your studies progressing? Lady Esther says I read better than most children twice my age, Evelyn announced proudly. Indeed she does, confirmed Lady Esther, curtsying to the Queen. And her memory is remarkable. She need only hear a story once to recite it perfectly thereafter. Annabelle's smile carried a hint of sadness. Just like my grandmother, she turned to Lady Esther. Would you give us an hour alone? I've brought new music to teach her. Once Lady Esther had departed, Annabelle produced a leather-bound book from her sleeve. This belonged to my mother, and her mother before her. Songs passed down through generations of women in my family. Evelyn touched the worn cover reverently. Why have you never shown me this before? Because these aren't ordinary songs. My love, Annabelle's voice dropped to a whisper. In my maternal lineage, music carries power. The right melody, sung with pure intention, can reveal hidden truths and heal wounded hearts. The little girl's eyes widened. Like magic, not magic, something older, something that resides in the very air of our ancestral lands. Annabelle opened the book to a handwritten page. This is the first song my mother taught me. It's called The Willow's Whisper, as Annabelle sang. Her voice seemed to change the very atmosphere of the room. The air shimmered almost imperceptibly, and Evelyn felt a peculiar warmth spreading through her chest. When the Queen finished, both sat in silence, tears glistening in their eyes, though neither knew exactly why. "I felt something," Evelyn whispered, placing a hand over her heart. Annabelle nodded. "The song connects us to our true feelings, bringing them to the surface. Now you try." The child's first attempts were halting, her voice breaking on the unfamiliar notes. But by the end of their hour together, something remarkable happened. As Evelyn sang the final phrase, her voice crystallized into a pure, bell-like tone that made the Queen gasp. "What's wrong?" Evelyn asked, startled by her mother's reaction. "Nothing's wrong," Annabelle assured her, though her hands trembled. "Your voice, it's extraordinary, even more powerful than mine was at your age." She hadn't anticipated this. The musical gift typically developed gradually through adolescence. For Evelyn to show such ability already, perhaps the isolation had somehow intensified it. Or perhaps the mark on her face was indeed a sign, not of divine disfavor as Bradford claimed, but of special blessing. "We must be careful with this gift," Annabelle warned. "We'll practice every day, but only when we're alone. This must remain our secret." "Even from Lady Esther?" Evelyn asked, surprised. "For now, yes. The fewer who know, the safer it remains, in his dimly lit private chambers." Sister Bradford carefully translated the ancient text before him. After years of searching, he had finally located the complete prophecy in a forgotten corner of the royal archives. "When darkest deception rules the throne, a princess born with the double sign shall rise. Her voice shall break the chains of lies. Her truth shall topple the false crown, and those who hid her light shall fall to shadow." Bradford ran a finger over the faded illustration accompanying the text. A woman with two different colored eyes and a marked face. The resemblance to Evelyn was unmistakable. His pulse quickened with both fear and excitement. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called, quickly covering the manuscript. The royal physician bowed as he entered. "You requested my presence, Sir Bradford." "Yes. How fares the Queen's health?" Bradford kept his voice neutral, though his eyes betrayed a keen interest. "Her Majesty appears well enough, though somewhat fatigued. She continues to decline the tonics I prescribe." Bradford frowned. "She must take them, for her own good. She claims they cloud her mind and make her sleep too deeply. Perhaps that would be beneficial. The Queen overtaxes herself with these daily visits to the eastern rooms." Bradford selected a small vial from a locked cabinet. "Add this to her evening tea. It's a gentler formula. She won't notice it." After the physician departed, Bradford returned to the manuscript. The prophecy troubled him deeply. The king's decision to hide the princess had temporarily neutralized the threat. But Annabelle's influence over the child remained problematic. Each day, the Queen spent hours with Evelyn, teaching her God knows what behind closed doors. As months passed, Evelyn's voice grew increasingly powerful in her 10th year. During a lesson on a particularly challenging melody called The Lament of Truth, something extraordinary happened. "Try again, darling," Annabelle encouraged. "Focus on the meaning behind the words." Evelyn closed her eyes, remembering her mother's instructions. "Don't just sing the notes, feel the truth they contain." As she began the ancient melody, her voice took on a resonance that seemed impossible for a child. The air around them shimmered visibly now, and the single candle illuminating the room flared brighter. Halfway through the song, the door burst open. Lady Esther stood transfixed, wide-eyed. "I heard," she stammered, "from the hallway. I heard such a sound." Annabelle moved quickly to close the door. "Esther, you must swear to tell no one what you've witnessed." Lady Esther's gaze shifted to Evelyn, who stood frozen in fear. "The gift of truth song," she whispered. "My grandmother spoke of this. It was believed lost generations ago." "It wasn't lost," Annabelle said quietly, "merely hidden, as we must keep it still." Lady Esther knelt before Evelyn. "I serve you as I serve your mother, Princess. Your secret is safe with me." That night, after returning to her own chambers, Queen Annabelle added a new entry to her journal, her hand shaking slightly. "Evelyn's gift surpasses anything in our family's history. When she sings, truth itself seems to breathe through her. But I fear for her safety. Bradford watches me too closely. The tea tastes strange despite my precautions. I must prepare her for what's to come, for I feel my strength waning with each passing day." In the darkness of her hidden rooms, Evelyn dreamed of singing to vast crowds under open skies, her voice carrying to every corner of Westridge. In her dreams, the mark on her face glowed with an inner light, and people didn't turn away in horror, but listened, transfixed, as truths long buried rose to the surface like bubbles in water, beautiful, fragile, and impossible to ignore. Your Majesty, the trade negotiations with Eastmere are becoming problematic, Sir Bradford's voice echoed in the Grand Council chamber as he stood before King Daniel, who sat with a distracted expression on his ornate throne. The king waved dismissively. They always push back initially. They'll agree to our terms eventually. I fear not this time, Bradford said, his tone carefully measured. There are whispers that King Alaric is reconsidering the alliance entirely. He has heard rumors. Daniel's attention snapped into focus. What rumors? That the tragic miscarriage announced 7 years ago was perhaps not entirely accurate. Bradford let the words hang in the air. Impossible, the king growled, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. No one would dare speak of it. Bradford leaned closer, lowering his voice, though the chamber was empty save for them. I believe the Queen's lady-in-waiting, Esther, may have loose lips after too much wine. She was overheard speaking with a visiting handmaiden from Eastmere. The king's face darkened with anger. Then she will be removed from service immediately. A wise decision, Bradford agreed. But we must also consider a more permanent solution to the delicate situation in the East Wing. Princess Evelyn is growing, and the more people involved in her care, the greater risk of exposure. What do you suggest? Bradford kept his expression neutral, though triumph stirred within him. Perhaps the princess could be relocated to the summer estate at Oakencrest, remote, peaceful, and with a small, carefully selected staff for her own protection, of course. The king considered this. Annabelle would never agree. Which brings me to another matter, Your Majesty, Bradford said, his voice softening with practiced concern. The Queen's health appears to be deteriorating. Daniel frowned. She seemed well enough at dinner last night. A brave facade. The royal physician reports increased fatigue, unexplained weight loss, and periods of confusion. He fears it may be the same wasting illness that took her mother. This was only partly a lie. The Queen was indeed falling ill, but not from any natural disease. For the past 3 years, Bradford had been slowly poisoning her. The specially formulated toxin, derived from rare black lilies that grew only in the northern mountains, produced symptoms that mimicked a hereditary illness known to have affected the Queen's family. Why wasn't I informed of this sooner? Daniel demanded. The Queen requested discretion. She didn't wish to burden you with worry. Bradford allowed a calculated pause. I believe her condition is exacerbated by her daily visits to the princess, the emotional strain, the stairs to the East Wing. Perhaps if the princess were relocated as suggested, the Queen could finally focus on her recovery. Queen Annabelle sat at her writing desk, her reflection in the mirror revealing the toll of Bradford's poison. Her once vibrant complexion had turned pallid. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her cheekbones protruded sharply beneath too thin skin. She had begun avoiding the tea served at night, suspecting it was tainted, but the damage was already significant. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the now familiar tightness that made each breath a struggle. The royal physician had diagnosed a hereditary weakness of the heart, prescribing various tonics that only seemed to worsen her condition. It had taken months, but she finally understood the truth. She was being systematically poisoned. Annabelle dipped her quill in ink and continued writing in her journal, using the special cipher she had created, a complex blend of ancient musical notation and the old language of her homeland. Only someone versed in both, as she had made sure Evelyn was, could decipher it. Bradford grows bolder each day. Today he suggested to Daniel that Evelyn be sent away to Oakencrest. For her own safety, I must act quickly. The physical evidence is hidden in the loose stone behind the Eastern portrait in the Grand Library. Samples of the tainted tea, records of Bradford's private meetings with foreign agents, and the original text of the prophecy he fears. A soft knock interrupted her writing. Enter, she called, quickly concealing the journal. Lady Esther slipped into the room, her face etched with worry. Your Majesty, I've been dismissed from service. The king believes I've spoken of the princess to outsiders. Annabelle closed her eyes briefly. Bradford's work. Have you told anyone? Never, Your Majesty. I would die before betraying you or the princess. I believe you. Annabelle took Esther's hands in her own. This changes our plans. You must leave the castle tonight, but not in disgrace. Take the sealed letter in my jewel box to Baron Thornfield. He remains loyal to me and will provide sanctuary until it's safe to return. Return, Your Majesty. Listen carefully. Bradford is poisoning me. I've suspected for months and have gathered proof. She pressed a small key into Esther's palm. This opens a compartment in the library. Inside is everything needed to expose him, including my journal. When I am gone, you must help Evelyn understand what has happened. Tears welled in Esther's eyes. Gone? No. There must be an antidote. A cure. It's too late for that, Annabelle said softly. The poison has done its work, but it's not too late for justice, and it's not too late for Evelyn. That evening, Sir Bradford paced his chambers, anxiety gnawing at him. The pieces were falling into place. The Queen was weakening, Lady Esther was removed, and the King was considering Oakencrest. Yet something felt wrong. The Queen had stopped drinking her evening tea months ago. He was certain of it. Yet she continued to decline precisely as the poison should affect her. Was she somehow aware and taking it deliberately to maintain appearances while plotting against him? A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Enter. A palace guard bowed. Sir Bradford, Lady Esther has fled the castle. She took a horse from the royal stables an hour ago. Bradford slammed his fist against the wall. Find her. She must not be allowed to reach any of the neighboring estates. After the guard left, Bradford retrieved the ancient prophecy from its hiding place. The illustration of the marked princess seemed to stare accusingly at him. Her voice shall break the chains of lies. He needed to accelerate his plans. The Queen was dying, but not quickly enough. And the princess, he had never actually confirmed the extent of her isolation. How much had Annabelle taught her? What powers might she have developed? In her hidden chambers, 14-year-old Evelyn practiced the most challenging piece in her mother's songbook, the Revealer, a complex melody that tradition claimed could make hidden things visible. As her voice soared through the intricate passages, she focused on the words her mother had taught her. Truth lies buried beneath layers of deception. Peel them away one by one. Suddenly, the air around her shimmered more intensely than ever before. A golden light emanated from her throat as she sang, spreading outward like ripples in water. Where the light touched the walls, faint symbols appeared, ancient writing that had been concealed beneath layers of paint centuries ago. Overwhelmed, Evelyn stopped singing. The symbols faded, but she had seen enough to recognize them as matching the strange language her mother had been teaching her, the same used in the cipher journal. The door opened, and Queen Annabelle entered, her face ashen. Mother, Evelyn rushed to support her as she swayed unsteadily. You shouldn't have climbed the stairs in your condition. I had to come, Annabelle whispered, easing into a chair. Things are happening quickly now. Lady Esther has been sent away, and Bradford pushes your father to send you to Oakencrest, the summer estate. But why? To separate us, to isolate you further. Annabelle took her daughter's hands. Listen carefully. Bradford fears a prophecy about a marked princess whose voice will reveal truths and overthrow corruption. That princess is you. Evelyn. She pulled her daughter close, whispering urgently, We haven't much time. I've prepared everything you'll need in my journal when I'm gone. Don't say that, Evelyn's voice broke. When I'm gone, Annabelle continued firmly. You must be ready. The song I've been teaching you, the lament of truth, will be your weapon and your shield. But you must perfect it. Make it entirely your own. Later that night, alone in her rooms, Evelyn sang through her tears, pouring her fear and pain into the ancient melody. Outside her window, a flock of nightingales gathered on the nearest branch, falling silent to listen to this strange new voice that somehow spoke their language, the language of pure, unadorned truth. The bells of Westridge tolled slowly, their somber peals washing over the kingdom like waves of grief. Black banners hung from every window, and the streets fell silent as citizens gathered in hushed groups, sharing whispered memories of their beloved queen. Inside the castle, 18-year-old Evelyn stood at her narrow window, watching as nobles and diplomats streamed through the main gates. After 4 long years of gradual decline, Queen Annabelle had finally succumbed to what the court physicians called a mysterious wasting illness of the blood. Only Evelyn knew the truth. Her mother had been murdered by slow poison, administered by the hand of Sir Bradford. Princess, Lady Esther's soft voice came from the doorway. She had returned to the castle 6 months ago, reinstated as a personal favor from the dying queen to her grieving husband. It's almost time. Evelyn turned, revealing eyes red-rimmed from days of weeping. I can't believe she's gone, Esther. The older woman crossed the room and took Evelyn's hands in her own. Your mother prepared for this day. She knew what was coming. She left me alone. The bitterness in Evelyn's voice surprised even her. No, child. She left you with everything you need. Esther reached into her pocket and withdrew a small iron key. The queen hid her journal in the loose stone behind the Eastern portrait in the Grand Library. Just as she told me. I retrieved it last night. She pressed the key into Evelyn's palm. This opens a chest beneath your mother's bed. Inside, you'll find her songbook and personal effects she wanted you to have. Evelyn clutched the key so tightly it bit into her flesh. Bradford will be at the funeral, standing beside my father as if he grieves when he's the one who killed her. And that is precisely why we must follow your mother's plan, Esther said firmly. The time for mourning privately is done. Today, Westridge will hear your voice. King Daniel stood before the ornate mirror in his chambers, barely recognizing the haggard face that stared back at him. Grief had carved deep lines around his eyes and mouth, aging him a decade in a week. Your Majesty, Sir Bradford entered after a perfunctory knock. The funeral procession is prepared. We await only you. Daniel nodded absently, adjusting the ceremonial black cloak around his shoulders. Annabelle would have hated all this pomp. Indeed, sire, the queen was always modest. Bradford's tone was perfectly calibrated to convey respectful sorrow, though his eyes remained cold and calculating. There is, however, a small matter requiring your attention before we proceed. What now? Daniel snapped. It concerns the princess. Bradford lowered his voice conspirationally. Several servants report hearing strange sounds from the East Wing, singing at all hours, conversations when the princess is supposedly alone. I fear isolation may have affected her mind. Daniel frowned. What are you suggesting? Simply that after an appropriate mourning period, we should revisit the Oakencrest proposal. A change of scenery might benefit the princess's mental condition. The king turned away, staring unseeingly out the window. I've failed them both, Bradford. First by hiding my daughter away, then by being so blind to Annabelle's illness until it was too late. You acted as any king must, prioritizing the kingdom's stability, Bradford soothed. And the queen's condition was beyond anyone's healing arts. Daniel's shoulders slumped. Leave me. I'll join the procession shortly. After Bradford departed, the king opened a small drawer in his desk and removed a miniature portrait of Annabelle painted in the early years of their marriage. Her smile, captured perfectly by the artist, seemed to mock him now, a reminder of the love he had squandered through pride and neglect. Forgive me, he whispered to the image. I should have listened to you about Evelyn. The great cathedral of Westridge overflowed with mourners. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across Queen Annabelle's flower-laden casket. King Daniel sat rigid in the front row, his face a mask of controlled grief, while Sir Bradford stood attentively at his side. Hidden in an antechamber, Evelyn prepared herself for what was to come. She wore a simple black dress provided by Lady Esther, and around her neck hung her mother's pendant, a silver nightingale with tiny sapphires for eyes. The royal choir will perform the traditional lament, Esther whispered, peeking through a small opening in the door. Then the high priest will speak. After his blessing, there will be a moment of silence. That's when you'll enter. Evelyn nodded, her throat tight with emotion. I've never been around so many people. Focus only on your mother and the song. Nothing else matters. Esther adjusted the light veil that obscured Evelyn's marked face. Your mother believed in you. She knew this day would come. Inside the cathedral, the choir's voices rose in a beautiful but conventional requiem. Sir Bradford scanned the crowd with narrow eyes, noting which nobles appeared genuinely grieved and which seemed merely to be performing the expected rituals of mourning. Knowledge was power, and every observation was a weapon in his arsenal. The high priest, an elderly man with a wavering voice, spoke of Queen Annabelle's kindness, her charitable works, her devotion to the kingdom. His words were eloquent but empty, the practiced eulogy of a man who had performed too many royal funerals to count. Let us now observe a moment of silence, the priest finally intoned, to commune with our beloved queen's spirit as she journeys to the eternal realm. The cathedral fell silent. Even the birds outside seemed to pause their songs. Into this perfect stillness came the sound of a door opening at the side of the cathedral. Every head turned as a slender figure in black entered, her face obscured by a thin veil. King Daniel straightened in his seat, confusion evident in his expression. Sister Bradford tensed, his hand instinctively moving toward the dagger concealed beneath his ceremonial robe. The veiled figure moved slowly toward the casket, stopping several paces away for a heartbeat. Nothing happened then. She began to sing, The first notes of the Lament of Truth floated through the cathedral like shafts of pure light. Evelyn's voice, crystal clear and otherworldly, seemed to emanate not just from her throat, but from her very soul. The ancient melody wrapped around each person present, finding entry through ears but somehow reaching directly into hearts. Old courtiers gasped in recognition. This was no ordinary song of mourning. It was one of the legendary truth songs, not heard in the kingdom for generations. As Evelyn continued, her voice gained strength, each note more powerful than the last. The air around her began to shimmer visibly, causing nervous murmurs among the crowd. The lyrics spoke not in generalities but in specifics, of a queen who discovered treachery in her court, of poison administered over years, of a king deceived by his most trusted advisor. The words named no names. Yet the precision of details left little doubt about whom the song accused. Sir Bradford's face drained of color as he recognized certain phrases, exact quotes from private conversations he had held with the royal physician, precise descriptions of the poison he had procured from the northern mountains. How could this be possible? No one had been present during those exchanges. King Daniel sat frozen, realization dawning in his eyes as the lyrics spoke of a mother's love that transcended physical barriers, of daily lessons in secret chambers, of a daughter's voice that carried her mother's final truth. As the song reached its crescendo, Evelyn raised her hands to her face and slowly removed the veil. Collective gasps echoed through the cathedral as the princess was revealed, one side of her face hauntingly beautiful like her mother, the other marked with the distinctive patterns they had all heard rumors about for years. But what struck the onlookers most were her eyes, one blue like the king's, one brown like the late queen's, both brimming with tears, and an unmistakable power that seemed to look directly into each soul present. The final notes of the lament hung in the air, echoing through the cathedral long after Evelyn's voice fell silent. In that suspended moment, as hundreds of stunned faces stared at the princess no one knew existed, Lady Esther slipped quietly from the shadows to stand beside her charge, ready for whatever came next. For 7 heartbeats, the cathedral remained frozen in a tableau of shock. Evelyn stood before her mother's casket, unveiled and exposed, her mismatched eyes scanning the crowd of unfamiliar faces. Some stared in horror at her marked face, others in wonder at the lingering shimmer in the air from her song, but all were utterly silent. Then the moment shattered. "Guards!" Sir Bradford's voice cracked through the stillness. "Seize that impostor, she defiles the Queen's funeral with her lies." 2 royal guards moved forward uncertainly, their loyalty to Bradford's commands warring with the strange power that still hung in the air. "Stop." King Daniel's command was quiet, but carried the unmistakable weight of royal authority. He rose slowly from his seat, his eyes never leaving Evelyn's face. I know those eyes. He approached her with hesitant steps, like a man walking in a dream. Up close, the resemblance to Annabelle was undeniable. The same proud chin, the same delicate nose on the unmarked side of her face. "Evelyn," he whispered, the name foreign on his tongue after years of forced silence. She met his gaze steadily. "Father." The single word rippled through the crowd. Whispers erupted like wildfire. "The princess. She lives. The king's daughter." Sir Bradford pushed forward. "Your Majesty, this is clearly some pretender trained to resemble the stillborn princess. A clever plot to destabilize the kingdom during our time of mourning. Stillborn." An elderly noblewoman in the front row rose shakily to her feet. The child was announced as miscarried, not stillborn. The Duchess of Havenwood, Annabelle's godmother, fixed Bradford with a piercing stare. "Why would you say otherwise, Sir Bradford?" Bradford's momentary slip ignited further murmurs. King Daniel seemed not to hear any of it, his attention fixed wholly on Evelyn. "Your mother's eye," he said softly, touching his own right eye. "And mine." He touched his left. "She always said you were the perfect blend of us both." Behind Evelyn, Lady Esther stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I have served as the princess's attendant since her birth. The Queen visited her daily in the East Wing chambers where she was hidden." Hidden. The word seemed to awaken Daniel from his trance. "I never intended. I thought it was for her protection." "It was imprisonment," Evelyn said, her voice carrying easily through the cathedral, though she spoke barely above a whisper. "But Mother made it bearable. She taught me everything she knew, history, languages, and the ancient songs of her lineage." Bradford scoffed loudly. "Clever theatrics. Nothing more, this woman, whoever she is, employs some form of enchantment to confuse your Majesty during this vulnerable time." The song she sang, interrupted another elderly noble, Lord Thornfield, who had served the royal family for 3 generations. That was the Lament of Truth. I heard it once as a boy when the old queen performed it after the Northern Rebellion. He bowed deeply to Evelyn. It cannot be falsified. Each note must carry absolute truth, or the melody shatters. Superstitious nonsense, Bradford sneered. Though his face had grown increasingly pale, Evelyn turned toward him fully, and many in the crowd gasped as they got their first clear view of the left side of her face. The scarring was extensive, puckered skin that twisted from her temple down to her jaw, pulling at her eye and the corner of her mouth. "Do you recognize your handiwork, Sir Bradford?" she asked, her voice like ice. "The poison you placed in my cradle as an infant, claiming it was a divine punishment. The same poison you used to slowly kill my mother when she discovered your treachery." Bradford's hand moved to his sword. "How dare you accuse—" "I dare because I have evidence," Evelyn interrupted. She turned to Lady Esther, who produced a leather-bound journal from beneath her cloak. "My mother recorded everything in this journal. Dates, times, symptoms. She suspected you were poisoning her for years." The king's face darkened with fury as realization dawned. "Bradford, is this true?" "Of course not. Your Majesty, this is an elaborate hoax. The journal is written in a cipher," Evelyn continued, combining ancient musical notation with the old language of my mother's homeland. No forger could replicate it. She opened the book and began to read aloud, translating as she went. "April 12th. Bradford replaced my regular physician with his cousin from the north. The new tonics taste of bitter almonds and leave my fingers numb for hours. When I refused today's dose, I overheard the physician reporting to Bradford, rather than to the king." She flipped forward several pages. "July 30th. I've been secretly collecting samples of the tainted tea. The royal botanist's daughter, who studies at the University of Eastmere, confirmed my suspicions. Black lily extract, slow-acting but lethal over time. Bradford believes I don't know, which gives me time to protect Evelyn." The cathedral had grown deathly quiet again, hundreds of eyes now fixed on Bradford, whose composure was rapidly crumbling. "This is absurd," he stammered. "The ravings of a sick woman. The queen's illness was hereditary, the same that took her mother. My mother's mother died in a riding accident," Evelyn said coldly. "There is no hereditary illness in her family." The Duchess of Havenwood nodded vigorously. "This is true. I was Annabelle's godmother and knew her family well." King Daniel turned to Bradford, 18 years of trust dissolving into rage. "You told me it was the same wasting disease that claimed her mother? You said the physicians confirmed it." I must have been misinformed." Bradford retreated a step. Looking desperately around the cathedral for allies and finding none, Evelyn closed her eyes and began to sing again. Not the full Lament of Truth this time, but a shorter melody that her mother had called the Revealer. As the notes filled the air, a strange golden light appeared to emanate from her throat, spreading outward in waves. When the light touched Bradford, those nearest to him cried out in shock. For a brief moment, his appearance seemed to change, his eyes turning completely black, his skin taking on a grayish hue. The vision lasted only seconds before fading, but it was enough. "Sorcery!" Bradford shouted, drawing his dagger. "She bewitches us all." In one fluid motion, he lunged toward Evelyn, the blade glinting in the cathedral's dim light. Several people screamed, but before anyone could intervene, Bradford froze mid-strike, his face contorting in confusion. Evelyn had not moved, had not even flinched. She continued singing, a single pure note that seemed to hold Bradford immobile through some invisible force. King Daniel wrenched the dagger from Bradford's paralyzed hand. "Guards, seize him." As royal guards surrounded Bradford, Evelyn's song faded. The advisor collapsed to his knees, the unnatural strength suddenly leaving him. "That dagger," Evelyn said, pointing to the weapon in the king's hand. "Examine the blade carefully." The king held it up to the light, revealing a dark green residue along the edge. "The same poison he used on Mother," Evelyn said quietly, "and the same he used on me as an infant, hoping it would kill me rather than merely mark me." Bradford, seeing his situation was hopeless, gathered his remaining dignity. The prophecy. He spat bitterly, looking at Evelyn, a princess marked by the gods whose voice would reveal truth and bring down the corrupt. "I should have killed you when I had the chance." A collective gasp rippled through the cathedral at this confession. King Daniel's face hardened into stone. "Take him to the dungeons," he commanded. "He will stand trial for the murder of Queen Annabelle and the attempted murder of Princess Evelyn." As the guards dragged Bradford away, his venomous glare promised this was far from over. The king turned back to Evelyn, his expression softening into something between wonder and deep remorse. Hesitantly, as if fearing rejection, he opened his arms to her. For a moment, Evelyn didn't move. The years of isolation and abandonment stood between them like an invisible wall. Then, with a small sob, she stepped into her father's embrace, allowing herself to be held for the first time by the man who had once rejected her. Around them, the citizens of Westridge witnessed the beginning of healing, both for the royal family and for the kingdom itself, and in the casket nearby, many could have sworn they felt Queen Annabelle's approving presence. Finally at peace as her final plan unfolded exactly as she had intended, the royal funeral transformed into chaos. As guards escorted Bradford to the dungeons, nobles whispered frantically among themselves, reassessing allegiances in light of these shocking revelations. Princess Evelyn, still standing beside her mother's casket, found herself the center of hundreds of curious stares. "We should continue this discussion in private," King Daniel announced, his voice cutting through the commotion. "The Queen's ceremony will resume tomorrow with the dignity she deserves." He turned to the high priest. "Please oversee the preparations," placing a protective arm around Evelyn's shoulders. The king guided her toward a side exit, Lady Esther following close behind as they passed through the crowd. Reactions varied dramatically. Some nobles bowed respectfully, others recoiled at the sight of Evelyn's marked face, and many simply stared in astonishment at the princess they never knew existed. Once in the relative privacy of the corridor, Daniel released his daughter and stepped back, studying her with bewildered eyes. 18 years, he murmured. "You've grown into a woman, and I've missed it all." "Yes, you have," Evelyn replied, her voice neither accusatory nor forgiving, simply stating a fact. The king flinched at her directness. "I thought, Bradford convinced me your condition was a divine punishment, that keeping you hidden was merciful." "Merciful for whom?" Evelyn asked. "For me, or for your pride?" Before the king could respond, the castle steward approached with a deep bow. "Your Majesty, the council has assembled in the throne room as requested. They await your instructions regarding recent events." Daniel nodded grimly. "We'll address them now." He turned to Evelyn. "Are you ready to face the court properly? It won't be easy." "I've had 18 years to prepare," she answered, her mismatched eyes meeting his steadily. The great throne room of Westridge Castle hummed with tension as nobles and officials huddled in anxious groups. When the massive oak doors swung open to admit the king and his newly revealed daughter, a hush fell over the assembly. King Daniel strode purposefully to his throne, but instead of taking his seat, he remained standing. "Lords and ladies of Westridge," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "Today has brought revelations that shake the very foundation of our kingdom." He gestured toward Evelyn, who stood with remarkable composure beside him. "I present to you Princess Evelyn, my firstborn child and rightful heir to the throne of Westridge." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lord Carrington, eldest member of the royal council, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, while we rejoice at the princess's unexpected existence, there are protocols to consider. The succession has long been promised to Prince Edmund of Eastmere through his betrothal to your future child." "A betrothal arranged by Sir Bradford," the king replied sharply. "An arrangement that now requires thorough re-examination." "Respectfully, sire," Lady Harwood interjected. "Sir Bradford's alleged crimes, shocking though they may be, don't negate diplomatic agreements made in good faith with neighboring kingdoms." Evelyn studied the noblewoman carefully. Lady Harwood had been a frequent visitor to Bradford's chambers, according to her mother's journal. "Lady Harwood," Evelyn said, addressing the court for the first time. Her voice, even speaking normally, carried a musical quality that commanded attention. "My mother's journal mentions 17 private meetings between you and Sir Bradford in the past year. Would you care to explain the nature of those meetings?" The noblewoman paled visibly. I'm not obligated to account for my schedule to a girl who appeared from nowhere." "Not from nowhere." Lady Esther stepped forward, Queen Annabelle's journal open in her hands. "The East Wing, 3rd floor, Northern Corridor. The princess has lived there her entire life, visited daily by the Queen." "This is absurd," Lord Preston sputtered. "We're to believe the Queen maintained this." Deception for 18 years. Impossible. Not deception. Protection. King Daniel's voice hardened. A protection I now realize was necessary not from public scrutiny, but from enemies within our court. The doors to the throne room suddenly burst open. Captain Reynard of the Royal Guard strode in, dragging a struggling figure in chains. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption," the captain announced, forcing Bradford to his knees. The prisoner demanded to speak before the court. He claims to have information vital to the kingdom's security. Bradford raised his head, his dignified demeanor somehow intact despite his chains. "Your Majesty, I have served Westridge faithfully for 30 years. I implore you to consider the greater context of my actions." Greater context for murdering my wife. Daniel's voice shook with barely controlled rage. "Politics requires difficult choices," Bradford replied smoothly. "The Queen was conspiring with foreign powers, her homeland of Lyria specifically. She was using the girl to channel ancient magic that would subjugate Westridge to Lyrian control." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Bradford continued, his voice gaining strength. "The mark on the girl's face is not from poison. It's the sign of Lyrian blood magic. Ask yourselves why the Queen kept her hidden, not out of shame, but to conceal her preparations for a Lyrian coup." Evelyn stepped forward, her face calm despite the vicious accusation. "If that were true, why wouldn't I have used this supposed magic to escape my imprisonment? Why wait 18 years? To perfect your powers," Bradford answered quickly. "The song you performed today was merely a demonstration. The full ritual requires the death of a royal. Your mother's sacrifice was planned to empower you fully." The court erupted in fearful whispers. Even King Daniel appeared momentarily uncertain. "He's lying," Lady Esther declared. "I've attended the princess since birth. There were no rituals, no blood magic, only a mother teaching her daughter the cultural traditions of her homeland. Convenient testimony from the Queen's most loyal servant," Bradford sneered. "Ask the girl to explain how her song immobilized me in the cathedral. If not magic, then what?" All eyes turned to Evelyn. "The truth songs of my mother's lineage aren't magic," she explained carefully. "They're an ancient art form that resonates with something in the listener's own conscience. You froze because your own guilt held you." "Not any power of mine." "Preposterous," Bradford laughed bitterly. "Search her chambers. You'll find Lyrian artifacts, spell books, ritual tools, all the evidence needed to confirm my warnings." King Daniel hesitated, torn between newfound trust in his daughter and years of reliance on Bradford's counsel. Evelyn stepped closer to her father. "Search my rooms if you must. But first, let me demonstrate something." She turned to Bradford. "Sir Bradford, when did you first discover the prophecy about the marked princess?" Bradford's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What prophecy?" "The one you mentioned in the cathedral. The prophecy that made you fear me." "I never—" Bradford caught himself, but too late. "You confessed before hundreds of witnesses that you tried to kill me because of a prophecy," Evelyn reminded him. "Yet now you claim my mark is evidence of Lyrian blood magic. Which is it?" the assembled nobles murmured as Bradford's contradiction became apparent. "The poison," King Daniel said suddenly. "If you truly believed she was a Lyrian threat, why use poison on an infant? Why not simply accuse the Queen openly of treason?" Bradford's composure finally cracked. "Because I needed you, you fool. With Annabelle's influence gone, you were malleable, predictable. The kingdom prospered under my guidance while you wallowed in false guilt." The throne room fell silent at this outburst. Bradford, realizing his error, attempted to recover. "I mean only that difficult decisions were necessary for Westridge's security." "Enough," the king's quiet command silenced the room. "Captain Reynard, return the prisoner to his cell. Double the guard. It seems Sir Bradford has many more conspirators than we initially realized." As guards dragged the struggling Bradford away, he locked eyes with Evelyn. "This isn't over, girl. Do you think I've survived decades of court intrigue without contingencies? My loyal followers won't let a disfigured witch seize power." After the doors closed behind him, King Daniel addressed the stunned court. "Lords and ladies, we will reconvene tomorrow after I've had time to review Queen Annabelle's evidence fully. Until then, the princess will be under my personal protection." As the court dispersed, many nobles approached to pledge loyalty to the king and princess, while others slipped away quickly, their expressions guarded. "We've made powerful enemies today," Daniel said quietly to Evelyn, when they were relatively alone. "We already had powerful enemies," she replied. The difference is now we know who they are. Lady Esther approached with worry etched on her face. Your Majesty, Princess, Bradford's mention of contingencies concerns me. He's had years to place loyal followers throughout the castle. Daniel nodded grimly. I'll assign my most trusted guards to you both. No, Evelyn said thoughtfully. Let them believe I'm vulnerable. Bradford's allies will reveal themselves more quickly if they think I'm an easy target. The king studied his daughter with newfound respect. You have your mother's courage, and perhaps my strategic mind, though I've given you little reason to inherit anything from me. We have much to discuss, Father, Evelyn said, her formal tone softening slightly. But first, we must secure the kingdom. Bradford's reach extends far beyond these walls, and his allies won't wait long to act. As twilight fell over Westridge Castle, servants lit torches throughout the corridors. For the first time in 18 years, Princess Evelyn walked freely through her ancestral home, her father at her side. To those who glimpsed them passing, the resemblance was unmistakable. The same determined set of the jaw, the same regal bearing. The confrontation in the throne room had been merely the opening move in a dangerous game. As Bradford had warned, it was far from over. Dawn broke over Westridge with an eerie calm. The castle servants moved through their duties with hushed voices and nervous glances. Acutely aware of the previous day's revelations, in the royal dining hall, Evelyn sat across from her father, both picking at their breakfast in awkward silence. I've never dined in this room before, Evelyn finally said, looking around at the ornate tapestries and gleaming silver candelabras. King Daniel winced. There are so many normal experiences I've denied you. Mother brought me books with detailed illustrations of the castle, Evelyn replied. I used to imagine walking through every corridor, climbing every tower. She met her father's gaze directly. I know this place intimately, though I've seen so little of it, before the king could respond. Captain Reynard entered with a deep bow. Your Majesty, there's been a development. 3 of Sir Bradford's personal guards were found missing from their posts this morning, and... He hesitated, glancing uneasily at Evelyn. Speak freely, Captain, the king commanded. Sir Bradford has escaped. Your Majesty, Daniel slammed his fist on the table. Impossible. I ordered his cell double-guarded. The guards were found unconscious, apparently drugged. We believe he had help from within the castle. Reynard lowered his voice. And there's more. Lord Harwood and Lord Preston departed before first light with their entire households. Several other noble families are preparing to leave as well. The kingdom divides, Evelyn murmured, more to herself than the others. The king's face hardened. Send riders after Lords Harwood and Preston. I want them returned to answer questions about Bradford's escape. Yes, Your Majesty. Reynard bowed again. There's one more matter. A crowd has gathered in the main square. They're demanding to see the princess. Evelyn looked up in surprise. Me? Why? Word of your song has spread throughout the city. Some call it a miracle. Others, Reynard hesitated. Others call it witchcraft. Evelyn finished for him. I'm not surprised. The kingdom needs stability, Daniel said decisively. We must show a united front. He turned to his daughter. Are you ready to face the public? Evelyn set down her napkin and rose from the table. I've been ready my entire life. The main square bustled with activity as townsfolk from all walks of life gathered beneath the castle balcony. When King Daniel appeared with Evelyn at his side, a hush fell over the crowd, followed by a rising murmur as people strained for a better view of the mysterious princess. People of Westridge, the king's voice rang out. Yesterday brought revelations that have shaken our kingdom. Today I present to you my daughter, Princess Evelyn, hidden from you these many years through deception and treachery. Evelyn stepped forward, her unmarked side facing the crowd. Whispers rippled through the gathered citizens. She looks just like Queen Annabelle. Where's her marking? I heard half her face was... Is it true she bewitched the entire court? Slowly, deliberately, Evelyn turned, revealing her marked left side. Gasps and murmurs swept through the crowd. Some mothers clutched their children closer. Others made signs against evil. I am Princess Evelyn, she began, her melodious voice carrying effortlessly across the square. I was born with this mark, which Sir Bradford claimed was a divine punishment. He poisoned me as an infant, hoping I would die. When I survived, he convinced my father to hide me away. She paused, surveying the mixture of fear, curiosity, and sympathy on the faces below. I am not cursed, nor do I practice witchcraft. The songs I sing are part of my mother's cultural heritage, a tradition passed down through generations of women in her family. Yesterday, I used this gift to reveal the truth about my mother's murder. In the crowd, an elderly woman pushed forward. Let her sing, she called out. Let us hear the princess's voice for ourselves. Others took up the cry. Sing, sing. Evelyn glanced at her father, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, she began a simple melody, not one of the powerful truth songs, but a lullaby her mother had taught her as a child. Her voice, pure and clear, drifted over the square like a gentle breeze. The crowd fell silent, many closing their eyes as the beautiful sound washed over them. Children who had been frightened moments before now stood entranced, small faces lifted toward the balcony. When the song ended, there was a moment of profound silence before applause erupted, not universal. Some still regarded her with suspicion, but many were visibly moved. My daughter will help me lead Westridge into a new era of truth and transparency, King Daniel announced. Together, we will root out the corruption that has taken hold during Sir Bradford's influence. As they retreated from the balcony, Evelyn's keen ears caught scattered comments from below. A princess with the voice of an angel. That mark is unnatural. No good will come of this. Bradford kept the kingdom prosperous. What will happen now? The kingdom was indeed dividing, just as she had foreseen. Miles from the castle, in a modest hunting lodge deep within the royal forest, Sister Bradford sat before a crackling fire, surrounded by his most loyal supporters. Lord Preston paced nervously while Lady Harwood watched the proceedings with calculating eyes. We should have struck immediately, Lord Preston argued. Now the king consolidates his position with every passing hour. Patience, Bradford advised, sipping wine from a silver goblet. Rushing would be fatal. We need to build support among the other noble houses. Half the court witnessed her song, Lady Harwood pointed out. Many believe she truly can reveal deception. We need to counter this notion. Bradford nodded thoughtfully. The Lyrian witch narrative will serve us well. I've dispatched messages to our contacts in neighboring kingdoms, particularly Eastmere. Prince Edmund won't be pleased to learn his betrothal agreement has been jeopardized by some marked girl's sudden appearance. What of your contingencies? Lord Preston demanded. You've spoken of them for years. A thin smile spread across Bradford's face. Already in motion. I've had 18 years to prepare for various scenarios. He reached into his tunic and withdrew a small vial containing a familiar green liquid, including the particular vulnerability of those with the Queen's bloodline. Lady Harwood leaned forward. You have more of the poison. Better. Bradford's eyes gleamed with malice. I have the antidote. The princess's condition can be greatly improved. The pain reduced, the scarring somewhat diminished. With regular treatment, her mother discovered this, and had been secretly administering it in small doses for years. How does this help us? Lord Preston asked skeptically. Consider the psychological impact, Bradford explained. The princess has lived with pain and disfigurement her entire life. Imagine offering her relief, restoration, normalcy, in exchange for her cooperation. You believe she would betray her father to ease her suffering? Lady Harwood looked doubtful. Everyone has a price, Bradford replied confidently, even the most principled. Besides, the antidote is merely leverage. Our primary strategy remains the same. Divide the kingdom, discredit the princess, and restore proper rule. And if that fails, Lord Preston asked. Bradford's expression darkened. Then we employ more direct methods. I still have loyal agents within the castle walls, including some the king would never suspect. Back at the castle, Evelyn stood in her mother's chambers, now her own, staring at her reflection in the ornate mirror. Lady Esther carefully unpinned her hair, allowing the dark waves to fall across her shoulders. The people responded well to you, Esther observed. Some did, Evelyn corrected. Others fear me, and many still harbor loyalty to Bradford. He built a network of dependency and corruption over decades. A knock at the door interrupted them. Captain Reynard entered, his expression grim. Princess, we've received reports that Sir Bradford has established a base in the royal forest. Several noble houses have pledged support to him, including Harwood, Preston, and Blackthorn. Evelyn nodded, unsurprised. And what of Baron Thornfield? He remains loyal to the crown. In fact, he's requested permission to visit the castle. He claims to have information about Bradford's plans. Grant it immediately, Evelyn instructed. Baron Thornfield sheltered Lady Esther when she was banished. He was one of Mother's few true allies. After Reynard departed, Evelyn returned to the mirror, gently touching the scarred side of her face. Lady Esther, Do you believe my father truly regrets his actions? Or is he merely aligning himself with whichever force seems stronger? Esther considered the question carefully. Grief has a way of stripping away pretense, Your Highness. I believe the king genuinely mourns both your mother's death and his role in your isolation. Perhaps, Evelyn said softly. But trust, once broken, is not easily restored. Bradford will use that against us. The division between father and daughter mirroring the division in the kingdom. She turned from the mirror, her expression resolute. We must be prepared for Bradford's next move. Whatever it is, it will target that fracture, in the royal family and in Westridge itself, outside the castle windows. Twilight descended on a kingdom irrevocably changed. Citizens gathered in taverns and homes, debating the day's events and choosing sides in the conflict to come. For better or worse, the hidden princess had emerged from the shadows, and Westridge would never be the same. Baron Thornfield arrived at the castle the following morning. A tall man with a weathered face and silver-streaked beard, his deep bow to Evelyn conveyed genuine respect rather than mere formality. "Princess," he said warmly, "seeing you standing here in your mother's chambers brings me profound joy. Queen Annabelle spoke of you often during my visits, though I was never permitted to meet you. You were one of her few trusted allies," Evelyn acknowledged. "Lady Esther has told me how you sheltered her after her dismissal." The Baron nodded solemnly. "Your mother saved my daughter's life many years ago using her knowledge of ancient healing methods. My loyalty to her, and now to you, runs deeper than politics." King Daniel entered, greeting the Baron with a firm handshake. "Thornfield, your message mentioned information about Bradford's plans. Indeed, Your Majesty, my hunters patrol the royal forest daily and have observed significant activity at Bradford's hunting lodge." Thornfield unrolled a rough map on the table. "He's gathering forces here, but that's merely a diversion. His true scheme involves Prince Edmund of Eastmere." Evelyn leaned forward with interest. "The prince I was supposedly betrothed to in absentia." "Precisely. Bradford has sent emissaries to Eastmere claiming you've used Lyrian witchcraft to manipulate the king and usurp the throne. He's urged Prince Edmund to demand a formal investigation before the Council of Kingdoms." Daniel cursed under his breath. "If Eastmere calls for a council, other kingdoms might support them. It could escalate to military intervention. There's more," Thornfield continued grimly. "Bradford has secured the services of the Crimson Brotherhood." The king paled visibly. "Assassins. The most expensive in the 4 kingdoms," Thornfield confirmed. "My sources couldn't determine the target, but it's obviously Evelyn," Daniel said, pacing anxiously. "We must increase security immediately." "No," Evelyn's voice was calm, but firm. "Hiding behind guards only reinforces Bradford's narrative that I fear exposure. We must be strategic." Lady Esther, who had been silently listening, spoke up. "Princess, the Queen's Journal mentions a technique for identifying true allies, a variation of the truth song that reveals one's deepest loyalties." Evelyn nodded thoughtfully. "The Cord of Alliance. Mother described it. Though we never practiced it, I believe I can perform it." "You want to sing to the entire court?" Daniel asked incredulously. "Not the entire court at once. Individual council members and key nobles, those in positions to either support or undermine us." Evelyn turned to Baron Thornfield. "While I identify our true allies here, we need someone to track Bradford's movements in the forest." The Baron bowed. "My hunters are at your service, Princess." "And what of Prince Edmund?" Daniel asked. "If he believes Bradford's lies, invite him here," Evelyn suggested. "Let him meet me in person before forming judgments based on Bradford's claims." The king looked doubtful. "That's risky, if he's already aligned with Bradford." "Prince Edmund has a reputation for fairness," Thornfield interjected, "and he was genuinely fond of Queen Annabelle during his previous visits. It might work." As they finalized their plans, a servant entered with a sealed letter for Evelyn. The princess broke the plain wax seal, her expression growing troubled as she read. "What is it?" Daniel asked. "A message," Evelyn replied, handing him the letter. "Unsigned, but the handwriting matches samples in Mother's journal. It's from Lady Harwood." The king scanned the contents quickly. "Bradford possesses something you need. Ask about the green vial." "What does that mean?" Evelyn touched her scarred cheek reflexively. "I'm not certain." But Lady Harwood was always pragmatic. If she's reaching out despite her alliance with Bradford, this information must be valuable. Over the next 3 days, Evelyn employed the Cord of Alliance with remarkable results. One by one, Council members and nobles were invited to private audiences, where she performed the subtle melody that revealed their true loyalties. Most reactions were minor, a slight shimmer around those genuinely loyal to the crown, a momentary shadow crossing the faces of Bradford's sympathizers. A few, however, showed more dramatic responses. Lord Mercer, the royal treasurer, briefly appeared surrounded by ghostly chains that led off toward the forest where Bradford hid. Captain Hendricks of the city guard trembled violently when the song touched him, confessing immediately to passing information to Bradford's agents. By the fourth day, they had identified 11 definite loyalists, 7 confirmed traitors, and a handful of opportunists waiting to see which side prevailed. "It's not enough," Daniel worried as they reviewed their findings in the royal study. "Bradford's influence runs deeper than we realized." "We've made progress," Evelyn countered, "and Baron Thornfield's hunters have located Bradford's main camp. We now know his strength, approximately 60 men, including deserters from our own guard." Lady Esther entered with a sealed message bearing the royal crest of Eastmere. "Prince Edmund has agreed to visit," she announced after the king broke the seal. "He arrives in 3 days with a small delegation." Daniel passed the letter to Evelyn. "He requests to meet you privately before any formal discussions." "Good," Evelyn replied. "I prefer directness." A commotion outside interrupted them. Captain Reynard burst in, dragging a struggling servant boy no older than 12. "Your Majesty, this boy was caught placing this under the princess's pillow." Reynard held up a small cloth pouch. "I didn't know what it was," the boy cried. "A woman in the market paid me a silver crown to deliver it." Daniel opened the pouch cautiously, revealing a dried black lily, the source of the poison that had killed Queen Annabelle. "A warning," Evelyn said quietly. "Bradford reminds us he still has reach within the castle walls." The king turned to Reynard. "Double the guard on the princess's chambers and assign food tasters immediately." "No," Evelyn countered. "We'll use this to our advantage." She addressed the trembling boy gently. "Could you recognize this woman again?" The boy nodded tearfully. "She has red hair and a scar on her hand." "Meredith Cole," Reynard said immediately. "Former handmaiden to Lady Harwood." Evelyn exchanged meaningful glances with her father. "Then we have our link to Bradford. Instead of arresting her, let's use her to feed false information back to him." Daniel regarded his daughter with newfound respect. "You have a natural gift for strategy. I had 18 years to study warfare and politics in the books Mother brought me," Evelyn replied with a hint of sadness. "The histories of Westridge are filled with such maneuvers." As night fell, Baron Thornfield's most trusted hunter arrived with urgent news. "Bradford is moving his camp tonight," the man reported. "My lord believes they plan to establish a new base closer to the Northern Pass." "The Northern Pass?" Daniel frowned. "That route leads to Eastmere. He's positioning himself to intercept Prince Edmund before he reaches the castle," Evelyn realized. "We must warn the prince immediately." "There's more," the hunter continued. "We observed Bradford meeting with a foreign dignitary, a woman in Lyrian dress." Evelyn and Lady Esther exchanged alarmed glances. "Did you recognize her?" Evelyn asked. "No, princess, but she carried the staff of a Lyrian truth speaker." "Impossible," Lady Esther whispered. "The truth speakers are sworn to neutrality in political conflicts, unless Bradford convinced her that I represent a perversion of Lyrian traditions," Evelyn said thoughtfully. "He's cleverly building his narrative, first positioning me as a witch, and now potentially turning my mother's own people against me. We should postpone Prince Edmund's visit," Daniel suggested. "No," Evelyn decided. "We send our fastest riders to meet his party and escort them via the western route. Meanwhile, we prepare a special welcome for Bradford when he reaches the Northern Pass." For the first time, a smile crossed the king's face, a predator's smile that reminded everyone present that before he was a grieving widower or a manipulated ruler, Daniel of Westridge had been a formidable military strategist. "A trap," he said with satisfaction. "But we'll need bait he can't resist." Evelyn straightened her shoulders, her mismatched eyes glinting with determination. "I believe I know exactly what will draw Bradford out of hiding." Outside the castle windows, a crescent moon rose over Westridge, casting just enough light for the hunters and scouts slipping silently into the forest. The hunt for the traitor had truly begun, and neither side would emerge unscathed from the confrontation to come. Fog shrouded the Northern Pass, transforming the familiar landscape into something mysterious and otherworldly, hidden among the rocks overlooking the narrow mountain road. King Daniel and his most trusted knights waited in silent anticipation. "Are you certain this will work?" Daniel whispered to Baron Thornfield beside him. "The princess was most convincing," Thornfield replied, "and our spy in Bradford's camp confirmed he took the bait immediately." Below them, a small royal carriage bearing the Westridge crest made its way slowly up the winding path. To all appearances, it carried Princess Evelyn, traveling with minimal guard to meet Prince Edmund's party and escort him safely to the castle. In reality, the carriage contained Lady Esther, veiled and dressed in Evelyn's clothes. The guards were elite soldiers from Thornfield's personal regiment, chosen for their unwavering loyalty to the crown. "Movement in the eastern ravine," Captain Reynard reported quietly, pointing to shadows shifting among the distant trees. Daniel nodded grimly. "Right where we expected them." Bradford was always predictable in his tactics. The trap was set. False information had been fed to Bradford's spy Meredith Cole, suggesting that Evelyn would personally intercept Prince Edmund to present her side of the story before he could be influenced by Bradford's lies. The bait was too tempting for Bradford to resist, a chance to capture or eliminate the princess, and potentially frame Eastmere for the attack. What Bradford didn't know was that Prince Edmund had already arrived at the castle through the western route the previous night, where he and Evelyn had engaged in a long, private conversation that ended with the prince publicly declaring his support for her claim. As the carriage approached the narrowest section of the pass, a volley of arrows suddenly arced from the ravine, striking two of the guards who dramatically tumbled from their horses. "Hold," Daniel commanded his hidden forces. "Let them commit fully to the attack." From the trees emerged Bradford's men, at least 30 strong, led by Lord Preston. They quickly surrounded the carriage, weapons drawn. "Surrender in the name of the true Regency of Westridge," Preston called out pompously. Inside the carriage, Lady Esther made a convincing show of frightened protests as the remaining guards surrendered, laying down their weapons. Lord Preston yanked open the carriage door with a triumphant flourish. "Princess Evelyn, you are hereby detained for questioning regarding treasonous—" His words died in his throat as a veiled figure that was distinctly not the princess emerged. Before he could recover from his confusion, the surrendered guards suddenly drew hidden weapons. "Now!" Daniel shouted. From their concealed positions among the rocks and trees, royal archers rose as one, raining arrows upon Bradford's exposed forces. Simultaneously, mounted knights charged from both ends of the pass, cutting off any escape, caught in the open and completely surrounded. Most of Bradford's men threw down their weapons immediately. Lord Preston attempted to flee but was quickly captured by Thornfield's hunters. "Where is Bradford?" Daniel demanded as Preston was brought before him in chains. "I don't know," Preston stammered. His earlier bravado evaporated. He was supposed to join us, but sent a messenger at the last moment saying he had more pressing matters to attend. Daniel and Thornfield exchanged alarmed glances. "The castle," Thornfield said, voicing their shared fear. "Ride ahead with your fastest men," Daniel ordered Reynard. "We'll follow with the prisoners." As the captain galloped away with a small contingent, Daniel turned to Lady Esther, who had removed her veil. "Bradford outmaneuvered us. This attack was the diversion, not our trap. The princess is well protected," Esther assured him, though worry creased her brow. "Prince Edmund assigned his personal guard to her chambers. Bradford has spent decades studying this castle's secrets," Daniel replied grimly. "There are passages even I don't know about." In the royal library, Evelyn sat with Prince Edmund, poring over her mother's journal. The prince was not at all what she had expected, neither the pompous aristocrat nor the gullible fool Bradford had tried to manipulate. Instead, she found a thoughtful, intelligent man only a few years her senior, with kind eyes and a genuine interest in truth. "Your mother's cipher is remarkable," Edmund observed, studying the journal's pages. "Combining musical notation with Old Lyrian creates a layered meaning that would be indecipherable to anyone unfamiliar with both systems." "Mother knew Bradford was well-versed in conventional codes," Evelyn explained. "She needed something he couldn't break even if he found the journal. The evidence she collected against him is damning," Edmund said, shaking his head in disbelief. "To think he nearly convinced me you were the threat." A soft click from behind the eastern bookshelf interrupted their conversation. Edmund's hand moved to his sword, but Evelyn placed a restraining hand on his arm. "I've been expecting this," she whispered. "Follow my lead." The bookshelf swung silently outward, revealing a darkened passage and a familiar figure. "Sir Bradford," Evelyn acknowledged calmly. I wondered when you would use my mother's secret passage. Bradford stepped into the library. A small crossbow trained on Evelyn. Behind him emerged the Lyrian woman Baron Thornfield's hunter had described, tall and imposing, with a staff bearing intricate silver inlays. Princess, Bradford nodded with mock courtesy. And Prince Edmund. What a surprise, I believed you were still en route to Westridge. I preferred to form my own opinions, Edmund replied coldly. Shifting subtly to shield Evelyn, Bradford's gaze remained fixed on Evelyn. I'm disappointed, Princess. I expected better security given your unique gifts. Perhaps I wanted this meeting, Evelyn replied, to hear what proposition you mentioned in your letter to Lady Harwood. A flicker of surprise crossed Bradford's face before his composure returned. Clever girl, yes, I have something you want desperately. He removed a small green vial from his tunic. The antidote to your condition. Despite herself, Evelyn's eyes fixed on the vial. Explain. The poison I administered when you were an infant. It's still active in your system, causing pain and preventing your scarring from healing naturally. Bradford held the vial up to the light. This counteragent can reverse much of the damage. Your mother discovered it years ago and had been treating you in secret. You're lying, Evelyn said, though doubt crept into her voice. Mother would have told me. Would she? Or would she have protected you from knowing your suffering could have been prevented? Bradford's voice softened to false sympathy. She couldn't produce enough of the antidote without arousing suspicion. I control the only substantial supply. The Lyrian woman stepped forward, her face stern. I am Valera, truth speaker of the Eastern Conclave. I come to verify claims of a corrupted truth song being used for political manipulation. There is no corruption, Evelyn replied firmly. I sing the songs as they were taught to me by my mother, as they were taught to her. So you claim, Valera said skeptically. Yet you used the revealer to expose a man publicly without proper ritual preparation or sanctioned judgment, because he murdered my mother and tried to kill me. Evelyn's composure finally cracked. Was I supposed to wait for official Lyrian permission while he continued poisoning the kingdom? Bradford smiled thinly. The emotional outburst of a traumatized girl, not the measured response of a true heir to the throne. Enough games, Prince Edmund interrupted. What do you want, Bradford? Simple. The princess will publicly recant her accusations, claiming grief-induced confusion. She'll acknowledge her songs were manipulated by her mother to create false memories. Bradford gestured toward Valera. The truth speaker will validate this statement, confirming Lyrian traditions were corrupted. And in exchange, Evelyn asked, you receive regular treatments with the antidote. Your pain vanishes. Your scars fade. You can live quietly in comfort, away from court politics. Bradford's voice dropped to a whisper. Isn't that what you've always wanted? To be normal? To walk without stares and whispers? Evelyn's hand unconsciously touched her scarred cheek. For a moment, painful hope flickered in her eyes. Don't listen to him, Princess, Edmund urged. He's manipulating your deepest insecurities. Bradford ignored him, focusing entirely on Evelyn. Your mother kept the treatment secret because she knew they would eventually run out. She couldn't bear to give you hope only to take it away. But I can provide a permanent supply. At the cost of the truth, Evelyn said softly. At the cost of justice for my mother. At the cost of a narrative, Bradford corrected. History is written by the victors, Princess. Choose comfort and healing over a futile crusade. Valera studied Evelyn intently. If you truly honor Lyrian traditions, you will submit to formal judgment before the Truth Conclave. I have a better idea, Evelyn said, rising slowly to her feet. Let me demonstrate the purity of my gift right now. Bradford tensed. No songs. Put down the crossbow. I will sing the Revealer, Evelyn continued calmly. Not the abbreviated version from the cathedral, but the complete ritual as recorded in my mother's songbook. If it reveals corruption in me, I will submit to Lyrian judgment. Valera considered this. The Revealer would expose falsehood in both singer and listeners. It would be appropriate. Don't be foolish, Bradford snapped at Valera. Her song is a weapon, not a ritual. But it was too late. Evelyn had already begun, her voice rising in the ancient melody that Queen Annabelle had taught her. The air around them shimmered, and Valera's eyes widened as she recognized the authentic patterns of the original Lyrian composition as the song built in power. Golden light spread through the library, illuminating faces with unforgiving clarity. Around Bradford, dark shadows coalesced like chains, while the vial in his hand glowed sickly green. "Stop her!" Bradford shouted, raising his crossbow. The library doors burst open as Captain Reynard and his men rushed in. Bradford spun, firing his crossbow wildly. Prince Edmund pushed Evelyn to safety as the bolt whistled past them. Despite the chaos, Evelyn never stopped singing, her voice growing stronger with each phrase. The complete revealer didn't just expose lies, it made them physically unbearable to maintain. Bradford fell to his knees, clutching his chest as if in agony. "The antidote!" he gasped, the vial slipping from his fingers and shattering on the floor. "It's poison. More of the same. It would have killed you slowly." Valera stared in shock, her truth speaker's staff glowing in response to Evelyn's song. The revealer responds to her perfectly. There is no corruption here, only in those who sought to silence her. As royal guards surrounded Bradford, Evelyn completed the final notes of the song. The golden light faded, leaving the library eerily still. "It's over," Prince Edmund said gently, helping Evelyn to her feet. But Bradford, even in defeat, managed one final venomous smile. "Not quite," he wheezed. "The king's trap at the northern pass left the western approach, completely unguarded." Distant horns suddenly sounded, the castle's alarm system warning of an approaching army. The western approach to Westridge Castle erupted in chaos as mercenaries bearing no kingdom's colors swarmed the lightly defended gates. Bradford's final gambit, a hired army positioned to strike when the castle's defenses were focused elsewhere. Captain Reynard rushed to organize the remaining guards, while Prince Edmund sent urgent messages to his personal guard. "We can hold the main gate temporarily," Reynard reported grimly, "but our forces are spread too thin with the king still at the northern pass." From the highest tower, Evelyn watched the mercenaries establishing siege positions. Bradford, securely bound and guarded in the library, laughed bitterly. "You've lost, Princess. Those men are paid handsomely from Westridge's own treasury. Funds I've been diverting for years. They won't stop until the castle falls." "There must be another way," Prince Edmund insisted, joining Evelyn at the window. "A secret passage. Reinforcements we could summon. The nearest loyal forces are Baron Thornfield's reserves," Captain Reynard said. "At least half a day's ride." Evelyn turned from the window, her expression suddenly resolute. "We don't need reinforcements, we need truth, Valera." The Lyrian truth speaker studied Evelyn curiously. "What do you propose?" "The Unifier, the most powerful song in my mother's tradition. It doesn't just reveal truth, it compels those who hear it to recognize their shared humanity, their common purpose." Valera's eyes widened. "The Unifier hasn't been successfully performed in generations. The emotional and physical toll on the singer is enormous, but not impossible," Evelyn insisted. "Mother said it requires absolute conviction and willingness to sacrifice. Even if you could perform it," Bradford scoffed, "how would mercenaries outside the castle walls hear you?" "From the bell tower," Evelyn replied. Its acoustics were designed to carry warnings and announcements throughout the entire castle and surrounding town. Prince Edmund shook his head. "You'd be completely exposed to enemy archers." "Not if we create a diversion first," Evelyn countered, a plan forming in her mind. "Captain Reynard, gather every available soldier at the main gate. Make it appear we're preparing a desperate sortie." "And meanwhile," the captain asked, "I'll make my way to the bell tower with Valera and Lady Esther. When the mercenaries focus on your apparent attack, I'll begin the song." Bradford's mocking smile faded as he recognized the determination in Evelyn's eyes. "You'll die before completing the first verse. The Unifier requires sustained concentration that no barrage of arrows would permit. Then we need to ensure she has protection," Prince Edmund declared. "My royal guard includes the finest archers in Eastmere. They can provide covering fire from the western battlements." As preparations moved swiftly, Lady Esther helped Evelyn review the complex notation for the Unifier in Queen Annabelle's songbook. "Your mother never taught you this song," Esther noted worriedly. "She believed it should only be attempted in the direst circumstances. If the castle falls, Bradford's allies will erase all evidence of his crimes," Evelyn said. "Mother's death will go unavenged, and Westridge will continue under corrupt rule. I'd say these circumstances qualify." Just then, King Daniel burst into the chamber, dusty from hard riding. "I came as soon as the alarm horns reached us," he said breathlessly. "Bradford, captured," Evelyn reported. "But he arranged a mercenary attack as contingency." Daniel embraced his daughter briefly. "The rest of our forces are an hour behind me. If we can hold until then." "We may not have an hour," Captain Reynard interrupted. The mercenaries have brought battering rams. The main gate won't withstand a concerted assault." Evelyn quickly explained her plan to her father. Daniel's face paled. "It's too dangerous, the unifier. Your mother spoke of it once. She said it nearly killed her grandmother. Do you have a better solution?" Evelyn challenged. After a moment's hesitation, the king shook his head. "What do you need from me?" "Lead the diversion at the gate personally," she requested. "Make it convincing." Minutes later, King Daniel appeared at the battlements above the main gate in full battle armor, his royal banner flying prominently. Below, mercenaries paused in their preparations, recognizing the king had returned. "Men of fortune," Daniel called out, "your employer now sits in our dungeons. Lay down your arms, and I offer amnesty and safe passage." A hail of arrows answered him, deflecting harmlessly off the stonework. Behind the mercenary lines, a hooded figure, Lady Harwood, shouted commands, keeping the hired soldiers focused on their task, while attention centered on the king's appearance. Evelyn, Lady Esther, and Valera made their way through a servant's passage to the base of the bell tower. Prince Edmund's archers had already taken positions on the surrounding rooftops, ready to provide cover. "Remember," Valera cautioned as they climbed the winding stairs, "the unifier draws power from your deepest truths. Each note must carry absolute conviction." "I understand," Evelyn replied, trying to ignore the trembling in her legs, partly from exertion, partly from fear. They reached the open belfry just as the battering ram made first contact with the main gate. The booming impact echoed throughout the castle grounds. "Now, Princess," Esther urged. Before the gate falls, Evelyn stepped to the edge of the belfry, visible to friend and foe alike. She closed her eyes, gathering every memory of her mother's teachings, every moment of pain and isolation, every fragment of truth she had discovered. Then she began to sing. The first notes of the unifier floated across the battlefield like ripples on still water. Unlike her previous songs, this melody sought not to reveal deception, but to bridge divides, to illuminate commonality rather than difference. Below, mercenaries hesitated mid-stride, lowering their weapons unconsciously as the unusual sound reached them. Lady Harwood shouted frantically, urging them forward, but her voice seemed distant and uncompelling compared to the crystalline tones cascading from the tower. As the song progressed, Evelyn's voice gained power, each note resonating with pure truth. She sang of shared humanity, of artificial divisions created by greed and fear, of the universal desire for home and peace and love. The air around the castle began to shimmer with golden light, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Where it touched the mercenaries, many dropped their weapons entirely, staring up at the tower in wonder. Lady Harwood, recognizing what was happening, screamed in frustration. "Archers! Target the tower! Kill the witch!" A volley of arrows arced toward Evelyn, but Prince Edmund's forces intercepted most with their own shafts. One arrow slipped through, grazing Evelyn's shoulder. She faltered momentarily but continued singing, blood seeping into her gown. Inside the castle, something remarkable was happening. Bradford, still bound in the library under guard, began to weep uncontrollably as the song penetrated his defenses. Years of carefully constructed justifications and rationalizations crumbled under the weight of undeniable truth. "I wanted to protect Westridge," he sobbed to his bewildered guards. "But somewhere, I lost my way." Outside, the mercenary force had completely halted their assault. Many sat down on the battlefield, weapons forgotten. Even Lady Harwood stood transfixed, her hood fallen back to reveal tears streaming down her face. As Evelyn reached the final verses of the unifier, her voice began to falter. Blood loss and exhaustion took their toll, making each note a supreme effort of will. Valera and Esther moved to support her, but it was Evelyn alone who completed the ancient song, the final notes barely audible, yet somehow reaching every corner of the castle and town beyond. And when silence finally fell, Evelyn collapsed into Lady Esther's arms, pale but conscious. Below, the mercenaries were laying down their weapons. Some simply walked away, while others approached the gates with hands raised in surrender. Lady Harwood knelt in the dirt, her face transformed by some private revelation. "It's done," Valera whispered in awe. "A complete unifier. I never thought I'd witness it in my lifetime." 10 years later, Westridge Castle was transformed. Where once dark tapestries and somber stone dominated, now light poured through expanded windows. The East Wing, Evelyn's former prison, had been converted into the Royal School of Music, where children from all backgrounds studied the traditional songs of truth alongside modern compositions. In the grand square stood a beautiful statue of Queen Annabelle, depicted not in royal regalia, but teaching music to children of various appearances. At the statue's base, golden letters spelled out the wisdom Evelyn had found in her mother's final journal entry. The forgiveness is not forgetting the past, but refusing to let it determine the future. True nobility lies not in blood or beauty, but in the courage to sing your truth when the world tries to silence you. Queen Evelyn, for she had been officially crowned 5 years earlier, when her father stepped down to serve as her advisor, walked through the castle gardens with Prince Consort Edmund. Her face still bore the markings from Bradford's poison, though the pain had subsided over time with proper medical treatment. She had chosen not to hide her scars, but to wear them as a reminder of what the kingdom had overcome. The annual Festival of Truths was underway in the city, a tradition Evelyn had established where citizens could speak without fear of reprisal. Renewing Westridge's commitment to transparency and justice, Sister Bradford had lived 3 years in the same isolation chamber where he had kept Evelyn, forced to listen daily to the songs of truth until he had confessed every scheme, every conspiracy, every hidden accomplice. In the end, he had taken his own life, using the same poison he had administered to others, a final escape from the truths he could no longer deny. As twilight fell over the kingdom, Queen Evelyn prepared for her traditional performance at the festival. When she stepped onto the stage, her marked face illuminated by soft torchlight, not a single person in the crowd saw deformity. They saw only their beloved queen, whose voice had literally changed the course of history. And as the first notes of her song rose into the evening air, those present would have sworn they heard a second voice harmonizing from somewhere beyond. A mother's love, transcending even death to celebrate her daughter's triumph and the kingdom's transformation.